Hi, my name is Kevin Pauls, and I'm a 19-year-old student athlete from Simi Valley, California. Over the past 10 years, I've been racing BMX, and in these 10 years, I've become a 7-time state champion, a 3-time national champion, and the 2015 USA BMX National #1 amateur.
Raise that up. There you go, bud. Hold it up.
Just recently, I competed at the Las Vegas Nationals on July 13th, 2018, and in my first race, I actually had a pretty bad fall in the first straight, and I broke my collarbone. This is my first time breaking a bone in the 10 years that I've been racing, and it wasn't fun. I was immediately rushed to the ER where I had x-rays done, and it was found that I broke my collarbone to be separated by 4 centimeters. So as I laid in the bed in the ER, I couldn't stop thinking to myself, why did I crash, and what could I have done to prevent something like that from happening? So for my final project for Psychology of Sports, I've decided to research the psychological explanation behind why people have injuries and ways that I can help myself recover from my broken collarbone. After researching why people can be susceptible to injuries, I discovered that a lot of injuries can be linked to the stress and injury model. Proposed by Anderson and Williams in 1998, they both said that most psychosocial variables, if they influence injury outcome at all, probably do so through a linkage with stress and a resulting stress response. They also hypothesized that increases in generalized muscle tension, narrowing of the visual field, and increased distractibility were the primary culprits in the stress-injury relationship. Generalized muscle tension can lead to fatigue and reduced flexibility, motor coordination difficulties, and muscle inefficiency, thereby creating a greater risk for incurring injuries such as sprains, strains, and other musculoskeletal injuries. Here's a diagram providing the basic overview of the stress and injury model. The stress response reflects a relationship between cognitive appraisals and physiological changes to potentially stressful athletic situations. With all of this in mind, it can quite possibly lead to an injury. When athletes experience distress or bad stress, they may feel inadequate to meet the demands of a situation and potential dire consequences for failure to meet these demands. In 2005, Rogers and Landers found support for the stress injury model's hypothesis that peripheral narrowing during stress is one of the mechanisms by which athletes with high life stress increase their likelihood of athletic injury. Peripheral narrowing refers to zoning into a task so much that you can only see what's directly ahead of you. The history of stressors, personality factors, and coping resources influence stress and injury. These variables may contribute interactively or separately in influencing the stress response and the resulting occurrence of injury. When I mention the history of stressors, this can include major life change events, daily hassles, and previous injury. It can also include a major breakup, the death of a loved one, or an increase in class workload. Over 50 studies have been done on life event stress and injuries, and almost 90% of injuries have been found to be caused by negative life stressors. Injuries tended to occur 2 to 5 times more frequently in athletes with high compared to low life stress, and risk of injury tended to increase in direct proportion to the level of life stress. Researchers have failed to show daily hassles as a contributor to injury risk. However, researchers have found that experiencing more major negative life events led to more frequent daily hassles, which in turn had a direct effect on injury frequency. The lack of optimistic personality characteristics and coping resources may leave individuals vulnerable to higher stress and therefore higher injury risk. From the 1993 study by Petrie, athletes who tended to have higher trait anxiety incurred more injuries or tended to have more severe injuries. Trait anxiety is the tendency to perceive tough situations as threatening and to react with an anxiety response. Those with high optimism will envision good rather than bad things will happen to them. Those with high hardiness feel deeply committed to the activities in their lives and consider change as an exciting challenge that furthers development. As hypothesized in the stress injury model, Ford, Eklund, and Gordon of the 2000 study discovered that those who were optimistic and hardy had fewer injury problems. So after discovering the psychological reasons why people have injuries, I'm thinking now, why did I crash? So I really think it just falls back to the stress and injury model where I was in the gate, zoned in, but I didn't have the best start. So I came out of the gate and I noticed I wasn't in front. So I had to overcompensate for my riding by leaning a little bit too far one direction, and that just threw me off, pushed me the other way, and I flipped the bars, broke my collarbone. People can say it's a fluke accident, and I can think that's a fluke accident, but it was just really me being in a stressful situation that I overcame in an incorrect way. So after my crash, breaking my collarbone was a done deal at that point. I couldn't go back in time, and it was broken. So the question was just in my head, like, what happens now? Will I need surgery? Will it just heal on its own? How long will I wear this sling? And the answer to that question was 4 days later I had surgery. I got a plate in my collarbone. One screw was used to initially put the two pieces back together, and 6 screws were used to put the plate onto my bone. So from that point, my surgeon told me that I had to keep my arm in a sling for 6 weeks, and it'll probably be about 3 to 6 months before I can touch a bike again. And just hearing this, I knew my summer was gone, and it made me pretty sad, honestly. And there was nothing I could do about it at that point other than let my arm sit in the sling. So this leads directly into the topic of an athlete's reaction to an injury. It can take personal factors and situational factors to develop an athlete's interpretation of the injury, which will then signify an emotional response or a behavioral response following that. So directly speaking from my own personal experience, it can be difficult for athletes to be positive and relaxed if they lack knowledge about their injury or ways to recover from it. So first and foremost, it's okay for athletes to know that injury is unfortunate, and it is okay to feel frustrated or disappointed when one occurs. However, it is unreasonable for athletes to convince themselves that they are hopeless or that injuries are a weakness to be hidden. This also does not mean that your season or year is over. If an athlete may seem frustrated with an injury, this is completely normal, and even a sign of progress toward recovery. It may help injured athletes to talk to others who have had similar injuries and the road back to competition. A 2012 study by Schwab, Pitzinger, and Yang concluded that imagery and relaxation were associated with better psychological coping during rehabilitation. Imagery consists of mental images that utilize all of a person's senses to mentally rehearse actions in a person's mind. The imagination of an athlete can greatly influence their response to an injury. Athletes can control their imagination and mental images to reduce anxiety and aid in the rehabilitation process. The 3 main types of imagery when injured are mastery, emotive, and healing. In mastery imagery, a person envisions themselves successfully completing tasks. This can help athletes become motivated through rehabilitation and eager to return to competition. In emotive imagery, a person can run through mental scenes that make them feel positive, enthusiastic, or confident. In healing imagery, a person can envision what is happening to their injury internally during the rehab process. So learning about this sparked an immediate realization in my head that I've been using healing imagery this entire time. Every day that I'd wake up, I would think like, hey, it's not hurting as much anymore. It's probably healing a little bit better now, and that the gap is closing, and that I'm returning back to a normal collarbone. It's helpful to set day-to-day and long-term goals when injured. This can include a new benchmark an athlete would like to accomplish during physical therapy, or even setting baby steps when returning to a sport. It can be helpful for an athlete to sit down with their coach, trainer, or parents to outline a plan of specific goals to reach. The 1999 study by Philby, Maynard, and Graydon found support that by setting multiple goals for an athlete's future, the athlete will have an improved level of task performance. Another study explained that if an athlete is largely involved in the goal-setting process, he or she will more likely be committed and motivated towards rehab. Also, another very important thing that not many people fully listen to is do not rush the recovery process and listen to your body. I've known many people throughout BMX that have told me that they re-injured something that they came back to a little bit too early. And it's not the best for your body. You'll only feel it later in life. I've talked to many adults in BMX who have had past injuries that said the same thing. And why would you do that if you can wait a couple more weeks for your body to fully heal? It's also important for an athlete to relax when going through rehab. Tension levels have been shown to increase in the area of injury, causing pain and work against the healing process. Relaxing the body can relieve built-up tension and increase blood flow to the area of injury. As shown in the 1996 study by Ross and Berger, injured athletes who partook in stress-relieving exercises such as deep breathing, progressive muscular relaxation, and imagery have been shown to experience less anxiety, less pain, and a shortened recovery compared to only physical therapy. So Tuesday, August 14th marks officially 4 weeks since I've had surgery, and honestly, I couldn't be any more positive about it. I've been feeling a lot better. I've been able to move around a little bit more easily without it hurting as badly, and I kind of got a gnarly scar out of it. I don't know if you can see that, but it's part of racing, it's part of sports, and you just have to bounce back. So in 2 weeks I go back to my doctor to see how my collarbone's doing and if I can take my sling off by that point. And if I have to wear it for another week, so be it. As long as it heals properly, then I'm happy. But out of this whole process of surgery and breaking my collarbone, I've learned that you can bounce back and you will continue to bounce back. Plus you get some cool hardware out of it, but that's just my own thing. Thank you.